Despite the fact of the inauguration of Joe Biden, both shows of AEW Dynamite and NXT did pretty good. So we're going to see which show was better, which had better surprises, and all this and that. So, all of that will be reviewed and talked about and discussed on this episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up. 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 Get up, get up.
Welcome everyone to Deleted Wrestle Zone. All things that is pro wrestling from AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, wrestlers, matches, and championships. I am your host, J Rod here. Now, as you know, we had talked about earlier that the inauguration happened. It did not affect this week's Wednesday Night War whatsoever for both shows. But I have to say they did pretty good. They pretty much raised the bar on their numbers. Now let's review who had the better the ratings and the views. It appears that AEW had the biggest views. They gained 854,000 views compared from last week, which was 762,000 views. As for the ratings, they got a 0.36 on the 18 to 49 demographic. As for NXT, they gained 659,000 views compared from last week, which was the worst, was 551,000 views with the rate of 1.5 in the 18 to 49 demographic. So basically, they did NXT gain more because it was the lowest of the ratings that they had a week ago. But like I said, it did pretty good. The fact that the inauguration happened on Wednesday, but it did not affect it whatsoever. But I gotta say, both shows did amazingly. We had already in the second week with the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, the first ever women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. AEW also had a match that celebrated the birthday of Brodie Lee Jr., the Inner Circle Tag Team Challenge, and various things that's going on within the Elite. So all of that will be talked about. So let's start with AEW Dynamite. Okay, so AEW Dynamite started with the celebration of Brodie Lee Jr., aka Negative One. As you know, he's dealing with the loss of his dad. This is his first birthday without his father, and you know how everybody at AEW are trying to cheer him up, trying to give him a good spirit, and they all come out with Brodie Lee, celebrating his birthday, and they turn on the candles, but the wind kind of blew it out. It was pretty good that everybody sang happy birthday, but however, the party was crashed by Chaos Project. You see, 2 weeks ago, Brodie Lee Jr. made some harsh remarks to Luther, telling him about his third eye, how stupid he is, that he has a bad symmetrical shape, all this and that, and they decided to start a fight. And then they tried to take the fight to them, but TH2 showed up out of nowhere. But of course, we had Hangman Page, who had a grand entrance to help out. However, that's not the case that also was happening. Not only they were celebrating Brodie Lee Jr.'s birthday, they even were hoping or counting on that Hangman Page would join the Dark Order, which something they've been trying to do. If you guys haven't been seeing this, they've been trying to do this since being the Elite. So if you follow that, it coincides with them. But the match was pretty good. I have to say, the ending part for me was the best part. How um, what's his name? Hangman did a little lariat on what's his name? I don't know. I forgot who it was. I think it was Jack Evans, and then later they do a little. Then Silver did a little suplex, and of course Reynolds finished it off with pinning him. But however, it didn't end right there. They were able to capture Serpentico, and Brodie Jr. tells him, "You try to ruin my birthday? Not gonna happen." So he whacks Serpentico, and then he goes out telling him, "My birthday was 3 days ago, you idiots." And Ten hands him the papers, which is infamous what made his father really fun in being the elite. But it did not end right there with Brodie Lee Jr. It ended where the fact they were trying to convince, ask him, would he already made up his mind in joining the Dark Order. He said he declined, and they were all shocked. They had no clue what just happened. I mean, they seemed like they were getting along, but Hangman kind of, how do I say, said that he hasn't forgotten what happened with the group thing. As you know, he was kicked out of the elite due to being manipulated by our FTR, costing his friendships with the Bucks and all that. And of course, I don't know if many fans were hoping he would join it, but you got to look at it as a standpoint. He wants to be the Lone Ranger or the Lone Wolf in the entire AEW, which is the same thing what Moxley's doing. But we'll see what happens when we move on from that. Now, the next thing we have is the interview with MJF and Jericho. As you know, Jericho set up the inner circle tag team challenge. Now, whoever wins will be the tag team that will go on to face for be the ones to challenge for the AEW tag team titles. Now, MJF was not sure, but there's those that don't trust him, thinking he's just a weasel or trying to weasel his way into win it, whatever the scenario is. So that's what really happened. Now, the next thing we have is Sting, who wanted to congratulate Darby Allin, and he said that he only helped Darby Allin because he felt it was unfair that Team Taz were interfering. But Team Taz kind of flipped it, saying that you guys played dirty. I'm like, no, no, Taz, you were the one playing dirty the entire time. You had Hook, you had Ricky Starks. So basically, they said they're going to take it to the streets. And Darby Allin accepted the challenge, but he did state, you wanted the streets? Then be careful. So there's that saying, be careful what you wish for. So we're going to see now, it's been confirmed for a while that we're now going to see Sting wrestle in AEW. Now, I know there's a lot of criticism or a lot of talk about that, but I will review this on the final thoughts on that too. So now then we had that whole thing, little controversy. As you know, the Elite has been, how do I say, taking turns. Now, Matt and Nick ended up going to Kenny's house, greeted by Nakazawa and then Don Callis. Now, Don Callis said that Kenny was going to be there, but he wasn't. What Don Callis was doing was trying to buy off the Bucks, saying that their presence is interfering with Kenny's destiny. And they didn't like that. So they tried to confront him, saying that they're not going. He's trying to buy them off, like saying, stay away from Kenny. But they weren't going to do that. But, you know, Don Callis, he's a schemer, he's a weasel. He is trying to do something. Now we get to the interesting match. We have Peter Avalon and Cody Rhodes. Now, personally, I don't know why this match was set, because I feel there was no story buildup. But however, things were becoming interesting when Cargill shows up and interferes. It appears that she still has issues with Cody. If you guys don't recall, Cody mentioned when he defeated Brodie Lee that he was a giant killer. And Jade Cargill took that into offense, saying that, how dare you say that you're a giant killer, that he hasn't faced a true giant, and that is Shaquille O'Neal. And we're going to see that in response. But let's get back to the match. When Cargill distracted, Peter Avalon took advantage of it and kicked him in the groin. At some point, Cody was having problems with the niche shrine. So basically, he lost focus because Cargill showed up. And not only that, she has issues towards Cody, she also has issues with Brandy because she believes her running the women's division is the reason it's going nowhere. But I'll explain more on that too. Now, But however, Cody did win on this one, which was a good thing. We don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see what's going to happen next week. Now, as you know, FTR has been trying to get back in the game to win back the AEW World Tag Team titles. They're currently number one, but however, they had issues with Jurassic Express. They beat them all thanks to their ways. So they confronted them, and next week it was already been confirmed that Jungle Boy will face Dax Harwood in a one-on-one match. But however, they try to weasel their way, saying they're not going to have Dax Harwood's not going to have Tully or Cash. But however, that's not what they want. They don't trust them, so all seconds are going to be in ringside, which is going to be a little interesting to happen. Next match, we had Jon Moxley showing up, taking on Nick Comoroto. Now, you can say what you want about this. Like, Nick Comoroto, they could have done better. But, however, I think their does are starting to talk about, man, this guy's a beast. Like, I mean, they should sign him. I mean, I wouldn't mind. But there was a moment where you see both Dustin and, what's his name? QT were scouting him. The match was great. I like how, what's his name? Moxley maneuvered putting Nick Comoroto in a sleeper hold and a chokehold and pinning and submitting him out. But however, in his little promo and post match, he said he doesn't care who's coming from Impact. Bring them all in. It's the same thing. So basically, he's a lot saying, "Come on into our doorstep." So that's what he wants. But he's also calling out Kenny. So that is going to be an interesting to watch. Now, as you know, it's already been set up. Eddie Kingston was in an interview talking about how he's now finally going to be in the match against the one person he's been, how to say, ducking the entire time, Lance Archer. But however, Archer shows up trying to send a clear message. So did Jake Roberts, because Eddie Kingston, he keeps bragging about how he wasn't eliminated, even though it did look like he was. But we'll see what happens for that on next week. Now, as you know what happened with Don Callis trying to weasel or scheme certain things, he shows up with a shiner and he tells it was the Bucks. He seems like he's trying to start stirring the pot here with more. So Don Callis is mostly the one causing more of the problems with this. So it's going to be interesting to see where this is going to happen with the Elite. Now, the next match we have is Top Flight teaming up with Matt Sydal taking on Private Party and Matt Hardy. Now, this is a very interesting match where now that Matt Hardy, he's trying to teach these guys how to go more of a killer instinct, be more aggressive than they ever were. And that's what they were doing in this match. It felt like it. Even after they won the match, where they continue more and more with the beatdown. So is this like the beginning where now we're seeing Private Party becoming full-blown heels? We may never know, but I would like to see where they're going to go with it. Next match, we had Layla Hirsch versus Penelope Ford. But however, this match was kind of like an interesting story where Mero comes out with Kip and, of course, his butler, Charles Taylor. But in the crowd, you see Orange Cassidy. Now, the match was pretty good with Layla Hirsch versus Penelope Ford, but however, once again, the interference by Kip, forcing Chuck to get in the way. But however, the match ended with Penelope Ford thanks to the helping hand. But in post-match, Miro is forcing Chuck to tell Orange that his real best friend is Miro. Orange Cassidy is helpless. He can't do anything about it. He knows that Trent's not there to help him. But there are those that are talking like speculations what's going to happen at the wedding. And I'll talk about that in the final thoughts. Now we get to what happened in the backstage where the Super Elite, which they were supposed to be called, they haven't announced it. Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers attack Penta. Now it's been foretold that Kenny and the Good Brothers, the Super Elite, will be facing Moxley and 2/3 of the Death Triangle, Pac and Ray Phoenix. So that's gonna be an interesting thing to see. Now the main event is the Inner Circle Tag Team Challenge. This was a pretty good match. It showed like they were not holding punches, but the way it ended, it was more controversial in a way because we all know who MJF, what his deal is. So he actually used the diamond ring to ensure that he would win. But the real question remains, is there a possibility that Santana Ortiz could leave? Because they were the one team that should have been going after the gold. But instead, Jericho got in the way. Even Sammy didn't like the fact this is happening. He called Jericho a tag team slut. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks for this, leading on to the Inner Circle, if this is going to be the end of the Inner Circle or what. So let's move on from here and start with NXT. All right, NXT was a good show, but majority of this show was focusing more on the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. So we had about maybe two matches for the men and possibly one match for the first ever women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, which is making history. But there were other matches too that we will talk about, which is the fight pit, which was the main event. So let's go start from finish on NXT. Okay. First match started off with the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic first round. We had Leon Ruff and Kushida versus members of The Way with Austin Theory and Johnny Gargano. Now, the match was alright. I was like thinking, okay, would I get the feeling that The Way is going to win? But it didn't go exactly like I thought because you've seen Gargano, how he'll do whatever it takes to win the match, even if The Way has to do every means necessary to succeed. That is what Johnny Gargano is trying to prove. But however, it was Kushida that made the win by submitting Johnny Gargano, and possibly we may see him to face Johnny for the North American Championship down the line. Now the next match we had is Ashante the Adonis taking on Karrion Kross. Man, Adonis was hammered by Kross, but that wasn't the way it ended. Kross decided to also hurt his guy who was in his corner. I forgot his name, but it was a clear message that he is coming to regain what he did not lose, but he had to relinquish. Now, we all know more about the newest tag team, MSK. We all know them. I mean, as you know, Zachary Wentz, he goes now by Wes Lee, and Desmond goes by Nash Carter. I don't know if it's a good thing because some people don't like when they go to WWE, they have to change their names. We already seen that on various occasions. But as MSK, I feel like they are going to be a really good tag team. I know that some of you saying they could have gone to AEW, but WWE had interest in them. But we'll see what happens. Now, amongst the women's in the NXT tag team, Dusty Rhodes tag team classic, we had Mercedes and Tony Storm. Now, they made their intentions clear. They're not friends, but they do have a common goal to dominate the women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, which is another part of history that's going to be in the books, but we'll talk more about that. Now we get to another match of the first round for the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. We have Imperium, Eichner, and Bartel taking on Lucha House Party. Now, to me, when I saw that this match was going to happen, the back of my head was saying it's going to be Imperium. Why? Imperium are trying to prove that they are the most dominant force in the entire tag team division. I mean, we do know they won the NXT Tag Team Champions. They're yet to win the NXT UK Tag Team titles. But I was surprised how it ended with them losing to Lucha House Party. So I was like, wow, that's pretty sick. But I don't know if it was by design. I'll explain that in a little bit and also put it on the final thoughts. But however, the biggest surprise right after the match, Eichner and Bartel saw right in front of them Imperium member Alexander Wolf. Now, I don't know what this is about. We do know that Walter will not make the move to the United States. He's not planning on moving. He wants to stay where he's at. But we don't know how this is going to play out. We just got to wait and see in the upcoming weeks what's going to happen. Now, we did see the weigh-ins between Ciampa and what's his name? Thatcher. Thatcher had the biggest weight, also a bit more taller than Ciampa. So that's pretty much what we can tell. I don't remember how much they weighed. I think Ciampa weighed 202 and Thatcher 224. I'm not sure. But yeah, but it became a little disrupted afterwards. Now let's get to the first ever women's tag team Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. The first match was Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez taking on Casey Canizaro and Kaden Carter. I'm not gonna remember much of it, but the one thing I can recall, it seems like it was like Martinez and Storm were dominant. But however, there was an opening where Martinez was taken out by none other than the current NXT Women's Champion Io Shirai. Recall, Mercedes attacked her. Now, both Storm and Martinez want the title, but the real question, who will be the one to get it? Now, Storm was unaware what happened to Martinez. Kaden took opportunity, but the biggest surprise was Casey Canizaro, the way she did some sort of flip, like a 360 or whatever. I was like, whoa, that is the first time I ever seen it. Now, to me, I'm thinking, did Ricochet taught her something? If you guys don't know this, she and Ricochet are dating in real life. And you know Ricochet's ability. And I'm like, wow, that is the first time I ever seen it. And it was like the biggest shocker and the biggest upset because most people would say, oh, it's going to be the dominant women. No, but Kaden Carter and Casey Canizaro, they seem like the one team. Now, I could pick them as the team that could win the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. Reason I say that is because I see them mostly together, even outside of the ring. I'll explain more of that on the final thoughts. Now, Finn Balor has been having issues with none other than Pete Dunne, Lorcan, and Birch. So he goes and approach Regal saying that he wants a piece of Lorcan and Birch. But Regal said he needs a partner. But he said, I don't need a partner. I'm the old me. But however, he did state it of an advice, which an advice we seen on the movie Godfather. You know the term. Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. So in reference to that, Regal is saying, keep Undisputed Era close. We know your enemies, and you know that you can use them. So basically, it's more like, it's not like he had a choice, but he's right, but they need to do something about it. At the point, he decided to go visit the Undisputed Era and talk to them, telling Kyle O'Reilly he likes him to be his partner when he faces Lorcan and Birch, which he did. Now, next thing we have is Russ Taylor versus Braun Reed. Now, this match was okay in my opinion, but I feel they could have done Russ Taylor a little better with a different opponent, like other than Bronson Reed. I mean, to me, I feel they could have given him a better opportunity with another wrestler, maybe almost the same caliber or somewhere not that close to him. I don't know. To show that he's dominant. But it put it Bronson Reed. Now, Bronson Reed, he's a good wrestler. I love Bronson Reed. but he won the match, but he screwed up by not paying attention to what his Malcolm Bivens was trying to tell him. So anyway, that's what I've been saw. To me, I wasn't too much sold on this one. Sorry, folks. Now, recently, Legado del Fantasma shows up to make a statement. Santos Escobar is proud that he believes that this year will be Legado's year, where they believe they can win the NXT tag team titles. But however, their party was disrupted by none other than Lucha House Party. It was a 3-on-1 situation, but however, the tables were turned with Kurt Stallion showed up to give Lucha House Party a helping hand. Now, Santos claimed that no one has able beat, but there is one person that's been ducking him. Or should I say, he's been avoiding him. Kurt Stallion. He did had a title opportunity against Santos, but they attacked him to ensure he wouldn't face it. But this time, it wasn't going to happen. Even when they were in the interview, Santos has had enough. He is going out saying he's going to expose him for what he is, a liar and a fraud. But he told him next week it's going to happen. So basically, this is going to be it. But ironically, what later was told, when they won their match, Lucha House Party, they will be facing Legado del Fantasma. This is going to be an interesting thing to watch. Now, next thing we have is the fight pit match between Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher. I'm like, this match was good. I did enjoy how it was going or progressing. Now, Thatcher's always a different type of breed of wrestler. If you guys don't know what I'm referring to, he's from a style called catch wrestling. Basically, it's a hybrid where you do submissions and all that. And Ciampa was trying to step up in the same ways, but it was an unbelievable win how he won. So that makes him the winner, the champion of Fight Pit Fighting. So basically, somebody said this on social media. Why not build a championship for this type of match? I mean, why not? I would like to see it. But other than that, it was a good show. But I'll give you guys my final thoughts, what I thought about both shows. And we'll see about it. Okay, so here are my final thoughts on both shows. I have to say, despite the fact of the viewerships and ratings, I feel that NXT had the better show because of in-ring wise, and not to mention the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. Now, this is something I have always been a fan of. Whenever they have the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, that's when I'm like, this is going to be an awesome thing. And also this year with the commencement of the NXT, how to say, what was it? The NXT Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic was going to be major. Now, I wasn't expecting Casey Catanzaro pull off that move whatsoever, but man, that was a good move. I didn't expect it, but I did state it. She must have learned it from her boyfriend Ricochet. So I give him props if he did teach her that. But however, what did I feel about the other matches? Well, I feel like, in my opinion, certain things were by design. Like Lucha House Party and Legado Fantasma facing off next in the quarterfinals. I feel that was by design because if you look at it, you got two Lucha Libre groups that have different philosophies. You look at Legado Fantasma, they believe they are the true leaders, the true pioneers of Lucha Libre. But you got Lucha House Party who feels no, everybody should embrace it. It doesn't matter if you're Mexican or you're white, Japanese, you embrace it. But they don't see things that way. So I don't know if that was by design, but I can't wait to see how this is going to go. And other matches like Bronson Reed and Russ Taylor, I wasn't sold on that one. The Karrion Kross match, I feel like, okay, it was a squash match. And the Fight Pit, damn, it was good. So I have to say, the Tag Team Classic was good. No, I wasn't sold. Like, the matches were, like, not a lot of them picked up my attention. Mostly it was the women's NXT Tag Team Classic that got my attention the most. But also the Fight Pit. Now, AEW, which matches that I did like the match, the 8-man tag that happened with, but I did like the story wise how things were going on this one. And I know there's been a lot of criticism with the women's division with the Layla Hirsch and Penelope Ford matches. But I did hear from reports from somewhere, I don't remember, Kenny said that he feels that the women division in AEW should have their own show. And I'm like thinking, you know what? We could see some. I would like to see that. Now, not because I say so. I'll give you the reasons why. If you guys don't follow certain promotions that it's all women's, like Stardom, Tokyo Yoshi Pro Wrestling, Ice Ribbon, Pro Wrestling Wave, Pure J, and some other ones, Sunday Girls Wrestling, and also here in the United States we got Women of Wrestling, Mission Pro Wrestling. UK, there's Pro Wrestling Eve. There are some promotions that are all females. Oh yeah, there's Shine and Rise. I feel they could do that. I feel why not? Like there's nothing wrong with it. If Kenny feels strongly it should happen, I say do it. Give AEW a separate show for all women. I wouldn't mind that. And Kenny, I feel like he's very supportive, but I think he's put himself in a bad position, trying to run the women's division, but at the same time doing his thing as a wrestler. I feel they should have a woman running the women's division. But not to mention, we got the AEW Women's World Tag Team Eliminator that I did not mention on the AEW line. There's been talk about the flags they put in. Like one side of the bracket is the American flag and the other is the Japanese. Now, I don't know if they will be able to bring in some wrestlers who are Japan. That is something I would like to see. If it is, I'm down with it. So we'll see when that happens. But however, I feel like the better show was NXT. Just because there were certain things I wasn't sold. I think the reason is, and I saw this with Square Circle Psychobabble, they did made a much bigger point. Maybe the reason AEW didn't feel like it was a good show was because maybe they thought, oh, the inauguration is going to overshadow them. But it didn't happen that way. I mean, look, they did good on the ratings and the views. Nothing wrong with that. But it's about the perspective, how we feel what we watch. And I hope you guys feel the same way. Now, I'm not saying NXT's better or AEW's better. I feel like there are certain things that they both have that makes them a good show. And that's how I feel. But we'll see what happens in the next week on that. So I think that's pretty much it for all of you. As you know, the next episode will be more on the Japanese wrestling. And of course, more. We're going to have Ring of Honor, MLW, NXT UK, 205 Live, and of course, New Japan Strong. So, I must bid all of you guys adieu. So, goodbye. Mwah. And have a nice day. Bang!